So, do you feel like an expert in UML now? You shouldn't, because you're not. All you've had is a very, very quick introduction. We're going to go over each one of these aspects in the form of exercises. Don't worry, they're pretty easy to do. If you don't have a UML editor, and there are free ones available, but if you don't have one, or you don't want to learn how to use one just to do the exercises, that's okay. Take a piece of paper, take a pen or pencil, and draw boxes and sketch in the names of the different classes and attributes. No problem with doing that. Each of these exercises builds on the previous one. So start in the middle of your piece of paper because you'll be adding more things as you go. For exercise 1, using UML, model the following requirements, basically by drawing classes and attributes. We want a motor vehicle with a property called engine size, an organization that has a property called name, and contact information, which has properties called phone number and email address. A hint, you'll be drawing classes and attributes here. So here's our proposed solution for exercise 1. We have a class for motor vehicle with an attribute called engine size, and we just made it a string. Now, in a real-life example, there's probably going to be a separate class called engine that'll have all these different properties for it, and then it would be an aggregate of motor vehicle. Motor vehicle made up an engine, but an engine can exist outside of the motor vehicle. But for the purposes of this exercise, just a string saying what the engine size is. There is a class for organization with its name as an attribute, and there's a class for contact information with phone number and email address both as strings for it. And it's okay if your solution doesn't look exactly like this one. That's perfectly fine. It should be something close. The ideas should be generally right, but it wouldn't have to be exactly like this. For exercise 2, we're going to add a little bit more. So again, using UML, model these requirements, adding to your existing diagram. So just add to your solution from the previous one. We need to add a vehicle that has properties called MSRP amount, make, and model. That's MSRP amount, not MSR make and model, but you know what I mean. 3 different things. MSRP amount, and then a make, and then a model. Also, we need to have a motor vehicle, which is a special type of vehicle. So go ahead and try that. And you should end up with something like this. We've added a vehicle class with the MSRP amount as just an integer, and make and model both as strings. And then we've added a generalization to show that vehicle is a more general form of motor vehicle. Or to put it the other way, motor vehicle is a more specific form of a vehicle. And a motor vehicle would then inherit things like an MSRP amount, a make, and a model, as well as adding an engine size that the generic vehicle might not have. For exercise 3, again using UML, model the following requirements, again adding them to your existing diagram. We need to add the concept of an organization having an organization unit. The organization unit consists of unit name and unit identification number. And an organization unit cannot exist without the organization of which it's a part. So go ahead and try to model that. So here's our solution. We've added a class for organization unit, given it a unit name and a unit ID number, both of those being strings. And then we've added a composition arrow to show that organization unit is something of which an organization is made up of, but that the organization unit cannot exist without the organization. The concept doesn't make any sense without the concept of it being part of an organization. Continuing on, we have exercise 4. Again, using UML, model the following requirements, adding them to your existing diagram. An organization is associated to a set of contact information. So here we've added an association arrow between organization and contact information. Now you'll notice on these arrows that the cardinality is already set to 1-to-1 on each of the arrows. I just wanted to point out that some UML diagram editors will automatically put 1-to-1 and then you can change them. Others won't. If you're drawing it by hand, you probably didn't, and that's okay. I just wanted to let you know that some editors just put them there by default automatically. So here's exercise 5, again using UML, again model the following requirements, again adding it to your existing diagram. Contact information has an address, and an address consists of street, city, state, and zip code. An address can exist outside the context of being contact information. After all, just because it may not be your contact information anymore doesn't mean that that address goes away. And here's our solution for exercise 5. We've added an address class in the lower right and given it the street, city, state, and zip, all as strings. And then we've added an aggregation arrow to show that contact information is made up of things like an address. But it's a hollow diamond at the base of the arrow, showing it's an aggregation, showing that the concept of an address exists outside and independent of the concept of the contact information, unlike the organization unit whose existence is dependent on being within the context of an organization. Exercise 6, using UML, model the following requirements, adding it to your existing diagram. An organization owns a motor vehicle, and it is important to know the date of purchase. In other words, there is information about that ownership relationship. So quickly model that. And here's our solution. Now note we can't just put an association arrow between the organization and the motor vehicle because we need to know information about that ownership relationship itself. We need information about the association in the association. So that means we need to make a vehicle owner association class, which we see there in the lower left. There we can put the date of purchase in as an attribute for the association. It's information about that association itself. And then we add the association arrows, one to the motor vehicle that's being owned and one to the organization. And we'll label those as vehicle and owner. And finally, the last exercise, using UML, model the following requirements, adding it to your existing diagram. This one's about cardinality. An organization can have 0 to many organization units. So for each organization, there can be 0 or there can be as many as you need. Each organization must have at least one set of contact information. At least one, can't have more. And a set of contact information can have one and only one address. No more, no less. And here's our final UML diagram. You'll see we've changed some of the cardinality. Look at the organization class in the middle. Its cardinality for the organization unit has been changed. Instead of being 1 to 1, it's now 1 to 0 ... Meaning for each organization there can be 0 up to as many as you need organization units. For organization to contact information, that's been changed to 1 organization per 1 ... Meaning for each organization there is at least 1 contact information but could be more, so 1 to as many as you need. And then the arrow from contact information to address is set to 1 to 1. Now for a lot of editors it'll default to 1 to 1. Since you probably drew it, you may not have put the 1 to 1 in before, but hopefully you did, as a consequence of doing exercise 7. And then now that'll be for each contact information there's 1 and only 1 address. So this is our finalized UML diagram for this little model we've just gone through. Now again, you're in no way an expert on UML. You've been exposed to the bare minimum amount of UML you need to know in order to start doing some NIEM work. If you're going to do a lot of NIEM work, and if you're going to get really deep into doing IEPDs, you're really going to want to search out some actual rigorous UML training so that you really understand how these various concepts work. You might also want to look into the NIEM UML profile available to see how you can use UML to go directly to exchanges without messing about with XML schema. Finally, a little licensing information about these materials. These materials are licensed under a Creative Commons license. What that means is that you can take these materials and distribute them yourself, or you can use them as a base for making derivative works. There are, however, 2 limitations involved. Limitation number 1 is that if you do distribute these works, you have to distribute them under a license identical to the one I'm showing you right now. And if you want more information about it, there's a URL on the screen. So if you distribute the works, you have to keep the Creative Commons license on them. The reason for that is that it ensures that other people can then take your work and do more stuff with it. These materials go back well over a decade in their original form, and they have been modified and enhanced throughout the years because this license protects the ability to do that, so it's very important. The second part of it is attribution. You need to give credit to the original authors of the work that you're using. So in this case, we're going to give credit to the various works that this work is based upon, and that's in the next slide. This particular work was funded by a grant from OJJDP, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. They're based upon other prior works, partially work done by the Department of Homeland Security under their own grant, and partially under work done over the years by the IJS Institute, the National Center for State Courts, and the Georgia Tech Research Institute. These materials are a combination of all those prior works modified and enhanced for the Children, Youth, and Family Services community.